Hello there and welcome to the Glow Up Method. This is the place where we discover exactly it is who we are, what we want to do with our lives, to live a life that makes us proud. Hello there. Hi, my name is Natasha and I am so lucky to be your host today. My goodness, let me just tell you, I am pooped to party today. I am really tired. Funny thing enough is, like, yesterday I had a conversation for like over an hour with my dad, and today I had a conversation over an hour with my mom. And I don't talk to either one very frequently. But it was really nice. It really, today is the 3-year anniversary of my uncle's passing. And so it's this ever-present reminder of the fragility of life. I think about that day, and, it was, it was like known, right? Like I knew, I had an idea that was happening because we had to make a decision. We, as in me, had to make a really tough decision to figure out what to do, because he was in this state where he was not classified as brain dead, because there was a very small part of his brain that was still working. And that part of the brain is like the fight or flight, like the last thing to go. And we were able to get him resuscitated to that. However, there was like no progress. Like 11 days had went by and nothing had improved. He was on a ventilator, couldn't communicate, physically, verbally. I don't know. Like, I know I'm kind of crazy to say this for some of you guys, but I do believe that there is so much more than what we can see out there. And so while we were not able to, physically communicate, I do believe we were still communicating that whole time. And I know some of you are going to be like, this is where I turn off. But if you don't know, I understand that. I would have thought the same exact thing. But having been in that experience with him, I know, and I've seen and experienced with my own soul, my own being, something that was not explicable. And if you've ever had this experience with a family member, a friend, a colleague, somebody else, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So, it was 11 days. He had a heart attack. And, like I said, they were able to resuscitate him, which was beautiful because, in a sense, we got these 11 days, but I also knew I wasn't going to leave him in perpetuity in the hospital on a ventilator where you can't communicate. My uncle was his brain. My uncle was this beautiful being that, was often misunderstood. He was so much smarter than the average person. And even after a stroke and significant brain damage, when he came back, even like he said, he would call himself broken. He was still like leaps and bounds way more intelligent than I ever was, and possibly will ever be. He was a very just, he changed my life in so many ways. He opened my eyes to possibilities and thoughts that I simply had no idea existed. I was running around with my default settings and thinking I needed to do everything like everybody else. And, he would call me a sheeple, never heard of that term. It was like I wanted to do everything by the book, and I wanted to do everything right, and I wanted to make everybody happy, where he was more or less not like wanting to do a single damn thing by the book. He wanted to do things his way. He would often say, take what anybody tells you with a grain of salt, formulate your own opinions, do your own research, like even what I'm telling you, don't take it as truth and fact. He was very playful, very jovial, but could also be very serious. He was aficionado for any kind of books. My goodness, they must have had thousands and thousands of books within that household. He was sentimental. He loved playing games. My life has been forever changed because he was in it, and my life has been forever changed since he has not been physically here anymore. And it's hard for me to even imagine You know, it's been 3 years. The weather is similar to the way it was, and perhaps that's why I'm a little bit on the sleepier side today, and a little bit more docile. You know, even my son got in the car and he's like, "Are you good?" You know, like I just am always like, "Hey, how's your day?" Like no matter what's going on, and I didn't have it. I was like, "Hey," you know, it's very, very just kind of, I don't know. So, you know, the ball keeps moving. I'm continuing to have my growth. And I understand, like, somebody was telling me yesterday, like, there's some kind of fact, some kind of, you know, statistic that it's 150 years after your passing that, like, there's nobody that will remember you. And that was so fascinating to me. That was, you know, I'm not here to be remembered. That's the, you know, like that's, you know, never been, you know, the legacy I'm looking to create. I like the lasting legacies, you know, and, I was here. I have 4 great kids. Hopefully they're going to leave a great impact on this earth. I hopefully will leave a great impact on this earth and help, you know, to progress mankind in the way I can. And does that mean by dominating different natural resources or land or any of these things? No, my journey is more introspective. It is more of, I've walked this other way, this default way that I had programmed into me, or, you know, I bought the hype that I was told in school that it had to be this way, and I had to raise my kids to be this way, and what I'm learning is it doesn't have to be that way. And perhaps by not being that way, it is the better solution for me, for my kids. Being open to my kids is experiences where, yeah, they are not atypical in the fact that, you know, they've left and gone and things like that, or they've left and gone and come home and, you know, continue to be here. My relationship with Chris, definitely atypical, in the fact that, you know, we have been through, you know, hell and back, and we still now are deciding to, you know, invest in one another. And you know, I think for myself that, you know, if I read in the textbook, and when I feel that conflict sometimes within me, even when I talk about my decision to be with Chris and having to verbalize that to other people, I know it feels right within me. Like, I know it feels right within me for, you know, supporting my son who is opting out of going to college at this point and investing in his dream, and pursuing his dreams, and passions. And I understand that the people I talk to aren't always open to that possibility. And when I share those things with people who aren't, it's not that I don't want to hear opposing beliefs. I think that there's a lot of value in those, right? Like if I would have just kept my own beliefs, I wouldn't have experienced this growth and transition in my own life. But it also just, I don't know, I don't always feel it's necessity. I don't feel it's a necessity to explain to everyone everything that's going on in my life. It's just not. Just as much so it's not anybody else's necessity to explain to me. But I say all this to say is life is moving along, and we never know when our exit day is, right? Like some people may know I had a loose idea after his heart attack. You know, they really wanted me to pull the plug that night. Like literally, not that it's like a plug, it's much different, you know, it's much different than what you see on TV, but like they wanted me to, and I was like, no, you know, I'm gonna maximize and get as much time as I can to see if he can come out of this. And 11 days without an iota of progress, and in fact some deterioration, seemed like enough time at the time. It seemed like that was the time that perhaps he wanted to be with his wife. Perhaps he wanted to go and be free of this body that had imprisoned him. He was overweight for many years. And he had, you know, worked hard to try to lose weight, was successful, then gained most of it back. He was in heart failure. I mean, he had a lot of things that were induced probably by his lifestyle choices, you know, and he, you know, was living in a body that had strokes and a weak heart and things like that. And he couldn't do the things that he wanted to do in life. He was grateful for technology and being alive at the time he was, where, you know, he can utilize these, you know, Amazon devices and Google devices and have them, you know, work for him so when he couldn't get up, he could still have lights or heat or those kind of things. But very much so, he did not want to live his life just living in his house. He wanted to be out in the world and experiencing new things and making connections and sharing lunches and food with dinners with people. That was what he wanted to do. And so I hope that in his freedom, he is out there soaring. As I've said, hawks, for whatever reason, are very much the bird that I associate with him. I have this whole story from after. So yeah, it's been a crazy, what's 3 times 3 is 9. So, 1,000+ days without him. And I miss him. I really do miss him. Like, I wish he could see me now. I wish he could give me feedback now. And especially when I'm in this stage where my kids don't need me as much. And in a sense, I don't need them as much. Like, where I've moved on. I had the same situation go with my grandma. It's like when there's more time that opened up, they were gone. And so it gives me this reminder, which is part of the drive for me to say, to Chris, when I started having these feelings, is like, hey, there's no better time than the now to say something, right? Because things are changing every single day. We wake up so different from one day to the next. And so I was really grateful that, just by chance, it wasn't like something planned or anything, that my mom and my dad both called and we had to talk about, we got to talk about many different things. We laughed and it was a beautiful thing. So I'm really appreciative of that, because while my parents are not much older than I am, they're only 16 and 17 years older than I am. I know that life is fragile and there's no guaranteed age. There's no predictability. There's no any of that, of knowing when the end is coming. And we have a family that's had dementia and Alzheimer's, and there's so many different things that it's this reminder to really be grateful that they're still here. And they aren't perfect. You've heard my stories, and it wasn't like they didn't want to be perfect. They were just doing the best they could with the tools they have. And that doesn't excuse any of the things that have happened to me. It doesn't negate what's happened in my experience as a result of this. But I have this true and deep compassion. I feel sympathy for their situation as well. I mean, they were doing their best. They didn't have a crystal ball. They didn't know what to do. They didn't have the best experience themselves. And I give that same grace to Chris a lot of times, because honestly, when you take a step back and you look at a person beyond what's in the present, okay, great. Yeah, right now things are beautiful. Chris sent me a lovely, beautiful message today. And he came over last night, so giddy and happy. And literally I got through all my stuff. And by the time we laid down, it was like 11:30, because I was so busy doing so much stuff, which is good, right? But I was exhausted. I laid down. I was like, okay, I think maybe I could watch a show with you. He's like, no, I just want to lay here with you. And he just laid there, looking in my eyes. We were laughing, we were talking, we were sharing stories, and it just felt really beautiful. Like, he was being vulnerable and sharing things with me, and I was being vulnerable and sharing with him. And it just was like a really special and beautiful moment. So yes, of course, the present is obviously an indicator of the future, right? But it doesn't mean that if we look at somebody just for the short-term thing, we have to also remember we're also dating or married to or in a relationship with that younger version of them, like me, who would, still, who I yesterday and probably a few months ago when I was talking about something else, have correlated music to helping me through difficult situations. When things get too chaotic, I can turn up the music, and even though the music can be loud, it still is this distraction from what's going on. So today's whole point, if you haven't got to it, is life is really precious, right? We get to choose how we show up each and every day. We can choose to hold a grudge. We can choose to, fight for what we believe in. We can choose to let go. We can choose to be vulnerable and share experience. And, there is something so beautiful about having regret, and the fact that, I regret that I didn't get to talk to him more. I got to talk a lot. My uncle, right? Like nearly every day he would call me at 9:30 a.m. and that was my good morning wake up call from him. Sometimes I could answer, others I couldn't. But he was there consistently doing what he could, independent if I could answer the phone, if I was in a meeting, if I was working, if I was taking someone to school. It didn't matter. He still did his part and made sure that he was available in my life as a friend, a confidant, a resource. And I say that to say, really, like, I know things happen and we get hurt. We get our feelings hurt. We have our own fears. We have our own insecurities, our own, battles with confidence and worth and all those things. And especially if we're not actively growing those muscles, right? Like if we're not actively working on gaining more confidence and practicing new things, like if we're staying safe, if we're staying stuck, it's even more difficult to open up to these ideas, right? We're kind of in quicksand and it's pulling us in. And getting out of that quicksand for me was so important because it has allowed this space of grace. And when I extend the grace to somebody else, I also extend the grace to myself. So yes, there are some regrets. There are conversations that were never had that I wish were had. But it also gives me this beautiful platform to have gratitude for all the conversations and all the things that did occur. And it gives you this like reminder that the people around you are not a guarantee, whether it be, they go for death or they just move or change. Proximity has a huge thing to do about it. Like if you were in my face, you were in my thoughts, right? Like good or bad. Like if you're constantly around, we are sharing dinners, we're sharing experiences. It's easy, right? Proximity. But if somebody's further away, it becomes a little more difficult, and life kind of does get in the way a lot of times unless you're actively working on it. Like my uncle calling every day at 9:30. So even so, like there'll be so many times in which I don't talk to my dad or my mom. And I know at some point in time, God willing, because as a parent, I obviously want to go before my kids do. God willing, it goes, as quote unquote, like, the normalcy of it goes, and the parents pass away before the child. And, that's the way we all want it. And don't, right? Like, that's a terrible thing to think about. But I want to be very cognizant of that, of knowing like, this is like a borrowed time. This is a gift. This is not a guarantee. And what am I going to do with this gift? Do I just leave it in the corner and let dust collect on it? Do I put it in my room to admire it? Do I interact with it? It's up to us to choose what we do. So this is my reminder to you to go out there and really, if there's somebody you haven't talked to in a long time that you really care about, if there's something that needs to be said, that now's the time. Now's the time. And it's so easy to hold a grudge. It's so easy to be mad. I mean, both of my siblings, they don't want to communicate with me. I can't change that. Like, I know how I feel. There's my cousin, and I don't want to communicate with them. Not that they're trying to, but I don't have a desire to. The things that have happened have been so hurtful that boundary, like I've moved on to a different place in my life, but I'm still so grateful for that relationship. Like honestly, had some of the best laughs of my life with her, like had this built-in best friend with her. So I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful for her. While I still choose to keep my distance, I understand because of that how my brother and my sister feel. If they feel like I'm not a positive force or influence in their life, then by all means, then we shouldn't be together. And I honor that. Even though I would be like, yeah, let's just accept you back in. Like we don't need to rehash everything. Just like with Chris, like, yes, there's certain things that do get discussed or brought up or maybe something in the current day triggers something from the past, and we work through it together. And that's the key, is that we can't expect life to have no, live in a honeymoon period forever and have no adversity and no, we're human beings, right? Some days like today, I might be a little bit more sensitive. I might feel, sometimes like, oh, okay, like the day before. And I kind of felt like, oh my gosh, am I pushing my agenda? Like, am I just wanting to, like I started having my own insecurities that I needed to work through. And instead of doing what my default was telling me, it was like, okay, you just withdraw, you do this. It was like, no, we go in closer. We have discussions. We work through this together. And if the answer is yes, I'm doing, he doesn't want to be with you or whatever, then we work through that instead of just making up stories and then living a life according to those stories. So I say all this to say, it is a great time right now. Stop this video. I'm going to cut it short. I'm going to give you an extra 10 minutes for you to go out there and go call somebody or text them, email them, send them a letter. Somebody that you haven't talked to in a while that you're really missing and you wish were a bigger part of your day-to-day life or weekly life or monthly life. Because someday, honestly, you're going to be gone and they're going to be gone. And, it would be so unfortunate as to not have just taken advantage of the time while you had it. So I say all this to say, please, number one, go out there today and give yourself a huge smile. Give yourself a compliment. Today, my compliment for myself is I'm really proud of you for doing the things that you don't always want to and showing up and even though it's hard. So I'm going to give myself that compliment. And then I really want you to go out there today, give somebody else a compliment, give them a big smile, and watch how they glow up. So thank you so much for tuning in today. Bye.